Hello and welcome back to Disney Journey. I'm retired Imagineer Jim Shull, and sharp-eyed viewers of the channel will notice that I moved inside. And there's reason for that, because it's starting to get cold here in Lost Canyon, and I wanted not a windy, not damp, not cold area in order to tell the story of the Haunted Mansion, which just recently this week opened a new queue. As the developed Disneyland outgrew its concept to be that little park in Burbank, finally moving down to Anaheim, California. Early concept drawings in the blue sky phase for Disneyland labeled that attraction as the haunted house, not mansion. And it was located on Main Street, USA, on a side street on the top of a hill with a cemetery and a church below it. You know, I've often thought Walt Disney knew and visited Knott's Berry Farm, and Walter Knott, the other Walter, had a church in his little roadside attraction park. So maybe Walt was inspired, but who's to say? The Haunted Mansion, however, was always depicted in all the concept art as pretty decrepit. Paint peeling, lawn unmowed, weeds, broken fence, pretty much of a haunted mansion according to the way we'd all think of it. However, over the years of development, per Walt's instructions, it became pristine because, as he said, he wanted all the creepiness, the spirits to be inside the house. Outside, he wanted it to be immaculate, the way the rest of his little park there in Anaheim is. It's interesting to see how Disneyland's, the ideas that started at Disneyland evolved and changed over the years. And a lot of it was funded through, the income and revenue that Disneyland generated. Look at the billboard to show how that revenue was immediately plowed back into the park. Now, over time, the Haunted Mansion found its way into the other parks around the globe, but not always in the same way as it was originally conceived for that ride there in Anaheim, California. Recently, the Haunted Mansion Anaheim benefited from the redevelopment of Critter Country as it became Bayou Country. It's been said that there should be a small projects department, because it's often that there are small projects that cry out to be built, but there's no justifiable reason or capital to do so. Now, in the case of Bayou Adventure, that provided both capital and a reason to drive other changes. As we look at the map, we can see where the old Hungry Bear now became the barbecue restaurant that gives a homage to Country Bears, which are long gone but still missed. There's a shop behind Bayou Adventure, in fact, two, both of which got overlays. As we move around now, there's the new carriage house there as part of the Haunted Mansion. And there's Magnolia Park, which got changed substantially. Now, the fountain that was in the middle of Magnolia Park got relocated to become part of the Haunted Mansion queue. And some of the statues that were part of the Fast Pass for Haunted Mansion got relocated as well to the queue. As we move around then to the old, now Tatiana's restaurant, that was the old French market. And again, it got a little bit of financial love and new design, in part because you had a really hit movie that gave a justification to freshen the restaurant and change the menu. But that doesn't mean all ideas work, because in the case of the old French market, when they built it, they built the stage to entertain guests who were dining. Now, in this iteration of the change for Magnolia Park, they rotated the stage. It's still there, but now it opens up in a way that entertainers can stand and, they can entertain people moving through the park. Now, the downside of that is, even now, we can see where entertainers, as they entertain, their music and lyrics and vocals compete directly with the Haunted Mansion cue music. It's impossible to argue against the idea that New Orleans Square is a flexible concept. After all, over the years, it's had proposed a wax museum, a haunted house walkthrough, will always contain the dry dock for the ships that sailed on the rivers of America. The area surrounding the Haunted Mansion evolved over time, and one of the first significant changes was the addition of the pet cemetery. Now, it began as a little, well, an enhancement done by the cast members in the park, because in the back of house area, an area the guests never got to unless they were evacuated, on the roof of the Haunted Mansion unload and speed ramp was an area of unkept landscaping, tall grasses punctuated by a number of statues of pets, of animals, presumably dearly departed animals. And it was there that the Imagineers doing enhancement were inspired. They took their enhancement inspiration from that. You can't have a design omelet without breaking a few eggs. And the eggs that were broken for this expansion of the bigger Bayou were the trees that were the separation between the exit of Haunted Mansion and, the old Splash Mountain, and also the old mature trees there in Magnolia Park. Now, having said that, I noticed that a lot of trees were planted. Unfortunately, we're a few decades away from having the mature trees that were cut down for this expansion. But overall, you have to evaluate things both short and long term. Short term, a lot of the issues that have been plaguing that area of the park have been solved, and it's been evolving over time. The Haunted Mansion did move into the other Disney castle parks. In Florida, it sits on the riverside, and it had the virtue of having nothing behind it, giving it a large forested area as a backdrop. But the rivers are going to be drained and this area may be exposed. When that same design moved to Tokyo Disneyland, however, it's not in a Liberty Square. No, it's has a different neighbor, not a river, but Dumbo, the flying elephant, because it's in Fantasyland. Now, it seems out of joint to have it there, but that's where it landed. Later on, after the opening, years later, there was the addition of Splash Mountain, which provided the Haunted Mansion a backdrop of rockwork that gave it a little bit more of a separation and a little bit more of an identity. Another version of the Haunted Mansion would soon move to France as part of Euro Disneyland. Next up, the Haunted Mansion became Phantom Manor as it moved to Euro Disneyland, which is now Disneyland Paris. There, finally, the original concept art found reality, because it truly is a abandoned, decrepit old house. And the landscaping in front is really sad, dead. And I remember walking that site during construction and after the park opened, marveling at the fact that you had the landscaping department not trying to grow things. No, actually, they were working as hard as they could to kill things. There were old trees that were chopped down and laid across the hillside to rot into the earth. There was gravel to tamp down the green that would be sprouting up as volunteers. And there was a lot of effort. Now, in that area, there was, again, a lot of very decrepit architecture, and there was at one point the idea of doing a carriage house. Unfortunately, for reasons of budget and time, it was never realized. There is a carriage house today there in Anaheim, but it's not nearly as decrepit and old as the one that was originally planned there for the Phantom Manor in Frontierland at Euro Disneyland. The Haunted Mansion is a classic, a Disney classic, and it's in almost every single castle park. It's interesting to note, though, how the original idea for it evolved over time. And the changes will ensure that the Haunted Mansion that we know today will continue to endure for generations to come. And with that, I bring this episode of Disney Journey to a close. If you haven't already, I'd like to invite you right now to subscribe. And furthermore, even to like, so you'll be the first in your neighborhood to notice when there's a new episode dropping.